I'm sitting here with my good friend Sharon Soliday, who just talked to us about her case study of Maria. Thank you for doing that, Sharon.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I, of course, have heard some of this story before, but it was good to hear it again in sort of thinking about it clinically. And then I didn't know all the speed dating stuff, so I was excited to hear all of that.
Yeah, I'm really glad I'm not personally speed dating.
Oh, my word.
I think I would be more devastated than she was when no one picked my name. I'd be like, what?
Well, yeah, and I think I don't think I would handle that situation well at all. My sort of social anxiety disorder would just totally manifest itself, and I think it would be a bad scene. So that's actually one of the things I was going to ask you, like, did you ever think about just talking to her about, like, this maybe isn't a great fit for you?
Well, we do talk about that, and she's not dependent on it, but she's also smart enough, I think, to recognize, I'm not going to rule something out. One of the things that she has had the most success with, because again, she's bright and can identify that, is actually going to like various meetups that happen around town for things that she's interested in. And so she can go and attend the meetup and see what's going on and engage. And it's people that share an interest. She goes, I feel like I do a good job then of narrowing the field to, likely. And and it gives me, in some respects, it's harder because there's so many social things to monitor in that kind of an environment that she struggles. And, but she's really trying to keep herself open to the different ways people meet each other, which I give her credit. Right. I definitely don't think all her eggs should be put into the basket of speed dating.
Dating basket.
Yeah.
God forbid anybody's eggs are in that basket.
Absolutely.
It sounds horrific to me.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I've only seen that like on TV. I haven't been in a bar and done speed dating. And I actually approached some of my now single friends and younger friends and said, someone's got to like describe to me. So before I go into this appointment with a client to talk about speed dating, like what really happens from your perspective? And they were like, it's weird and hard and probably worthwhile every now and then. And I'm like, okay. And so it took some education on my behalf just to learn socially kind of what's happening, because some of them, here are things I learned, Kelly. Some of them.
Please share, Sharon.
Some of them, there's like a social component before people sit down to speed date. And so everybody's sort of milling about in the group and maybe had some conversation. And then some of them have the same social piece after the speed dating. So people have an opportunity to kind of mingle after you've met everyone and see kind of maybe somebody chooses to come over and chat with you again. That's a pretty good indication.
Sure.
They might be interested in you. So we talked about sort of the different pieces of it. And thank God, at least the one she goes to, she doesn't have to rotate seats, because I thought, that's going to be a whole nother transition and issue to deal with. Yeah. And also simultaneously, what she has to manage is you have to take notes on these people. So you have to take notes after you have a chit chat for 5 minutes.
And like rate who you want.
Yes. But simultaneously, someone else is coming over to sit down. And so there's so much in terms of being polite. You want to welcome someone, but you want to finish your notes so it makes sense to you later. And, that's hard enough. If she had to physically get up and move seat to seat, I don't know that it would happen.
No,
it's just too much.
Right. I mean, that's a lot for somebody who's neurotypical to manage.
Right.
It's just... yeah, see, I feel a little anxious right now just thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the big takeaways about this, I love this story because I'm somebody who, did adult stuff in grad school, but haven't done anything really ever since. And really, I think these stories are so important because they show us the sort of end game and the progression. And so
Right.
when I was listening to you, I just kept writing down foundational, foundational, foundational. Like, you talk about figurative language. Like, okay, how many gazillions of times have I written a figurative language goal and we're working on idioms and I'm like, oh my gosh, who cares? But okay, there you go. Lean it or walk to the door. Like, that's figurative language. And so to really think about, and proximity, right? Like,
Right.
okay, so proximity in kindergarten means you are not like all up in somebody's business all the time.
Right.
But what does that's important. We talk about not being in somebody's business in kindergarten because when you are going on a date or whatever, I just think it's really important for whichever age range you work with to see how it looks on either side.
Oh, absolutely. And if anything, it's really reinforced what I used to teach at the high school, but also taught me, because I think you have to have that. You have
Right.
to have those, because every now and then she'll look at me funny when I'll say, I'm notorious for saying, well, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Right.
And she
Right,
looks
right,
at me
right.
like,
Huh?
what has that got to do with dating? And I'm like, okay, my apologies. And I have to apologize a lot, I feel, in these environments, but it's humbling and that's good for me. But, at the same time, for example, strategies I taught at high school, like when somebody was getting cut off, I would tell people, it's okay. I would tell kids, it's okay to say, I need a minute. I need a minute to
Sure.
process that.
Mm-hmm.
We call that self-advocating, and that's really good. Okay, in adult life, if you're at a meetup and someone tells a joke and you don't get it, to stand there and say, I need a minute to process that.
Right. And then start laughing a minute later.
Yeah,
Oh, I get
exactly.
it.
Yeah. I said, that's not good. And she made it very clear because I suggested an adolescent strategy like that. And she looked at me and she says, she goes, maybe you don't know. And this was sweet because she really thought she was teaching me. And I just thought I'm an idiot. But she goes, maybe you don't know. But when I say to someone, I need a minute to process, they're going to project all sorts of disability on me. Like
Sure.
she goes,
Right.
I'm going to look like I'm impaired and
Right.
like I'm slow and I'm not. I just need to learn these rules. That's kind of how she thinks of it. And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I can't imagine saying to someone on a date, can you just give me a minute to process that? I mean,
Right.
that's just like, ugh,
Right. Right.
that's not
And
good.
there's so much stuff like that. Like, what do you think? What's your advice for clinicians, let's say almost any level, like, but particularly high school level? What's your advice based on this experience?
I think I think it's important to realize that what we're teaching is really important. And at the high school, in terms of advocacy and having that self-awareness and how you fit into an environment and how you're presenting an environment, because I think, it probably takes our kids 4 years to just take that away.
Oh, yeah.
But if you can take that away, I think that's huge. And then if you want to learn more as you get older, because even at 18, when they graduate, neurotypical kids don't have their stuff together really.
Oh my gosh.
Those quality dates that you really care about happen in your mid 20s,
Sure.
and late 20s. And so um that's when hopefully there's been enough practice on both sides of the table where you
Right.
can know how to apply some of what you learned and generalize in different ways. So I think what we do is really important at the high school. But with that said, you cannot have an expectation that that's how they will function as adults and use those same strategies. I think it's okay in a work setting to say, I need just a minute to process what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
You're all over the place, but you can't say that in a social setting. I mean, you look odd unless you're with really good friends who are very aware of what your needs are. And then it's still a little odd in that. And so what she's done to compensate, here's a great strategy that I've also taught adolescents that I think you could also teach and successfully teach adults, is that sometimes if she knows, like she's in a group, somebody she's doing something and she misses her turn, or, it's supposed to be, and they'll say, hey, pay attention. Like,
Uh-huh.
and she'll, instead of saying, I'm having trouble visually tracking the game, or, something like this, she'll say, oh, sorry, I didn't get a lot of great sleep last night.
Oh,
She'll compensate with these, I'm feeling just a little spacey, that, really anyone at the table could say. And that's our litmus test, is could anybody at the table say that and it not be weird?
oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so I don't think you can say that every round, but I think
Right.
and that will buy you time to, because we all do that. I mean, I've been in conversations with very dear friends, and all of a sudden I'm contemplating my washing, and they'll be like, hello,
Yeah.
back.
Did you
And
hear
so,
me?
oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Sorry. What are we talking about?
Right. Yeah.
And so, that is not, that's not a distractor, but you have to learn with that. And we teach some adolescents that skill, but with that, you can't be dependent on that skill alone.
Yeah. And I love
So,
what you just said. I love that rule of like, could somebody else say this and not look like a weirdo?
right.
And that is sort of the ultimate test. And another thing that I was thinking when you were talking is just how, I mean, it's remarkable that she sought help and sought it from a speech pathologist. And, maybe talking, especially, with our high schoolers who are getting ready to finish up, that, that they can seek out kind of social coaching throughout their lifespan. Because it seems like at every turn, there's another, like she said, like, it's another set of rules. It's another,
Yeah.
I think that kind of, when you said that other people say, I can't believe you were talking about this. I mean, who else is going to talk about this with somebody?
Well, that's the last thing I really wanted to clarify, because I have had a couple of people say, why in the world would this be in the domain of a speech pathologist, Sharon? Are you really in the scope of practice for what you should be doing? And I look at them. I'm like, clearly you don't understand what I do. Because could she go to like just a communication coach and get the same tips? I would argue that she might get similar information, but what I bring to the table and what anybody in my profession brings to the table is the ability to recognize how information is breaking down for her, and
Right,
how
right.
to scaffold that, because I could see and I think that is a very valuable piece of information, that I have an understanding of what autism is. I have an understanding of how dependent some might be on visual cues. I have an understanding of all the different variables that are going to be screwing them up. And that when we're sitting at that table and she's presenting, leaning in, that, I think a communication coach might just say, okay, you need to sit up straight.
Right.
But I'm the one to say, why are you doing that? And how is it breaking down? And
Right.
she then has to learn, like, oh, okay, well, I've read you lean in, but now I know you have to also lean out. She goes, why doesn't anybody lean out? I tell you to lean out. I love that.
Yeah,
line.
it's Sheryl Sandberg's new book, Lean Out.
Right, exactly.
Lean in and then you lean out.
Yeah, exactly.
But that piece of, that's the disability level understanding and the therapeutic understanding of how to remediate those sorts of deficits.
Absolutely.
That's where I think, I mean, I just can't see anybody else. And when you were talking, I was like, okay, who else is going to pick up the ball here? Like,
right.
I can't, like you said, a communication coach, maybe, and maybe, clearly it's entirely possible there's a communication coach out there that has a really nuanced understanding of social skills as far as how they relate to people with ASD, but I just don't, and maybe like a psychologist.
Yeah, maybe.
But again, it's a really interesting thing to think about, as far as our scope of practice.
Absolutely, because she doesn't want to do talk therapy. She doesn't want to just be told what to do. She wants to understand how she's presenting and where it breaks down, and the rules she can learn to fix it.
Right.
And how she can then apply it to other settings. So I think there's a definite role there. And I probably, have to thank some clinician that she had in her past that she felt she learned a great deal from, because that's who she then turned to as an adult.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's a
So,
very good point. So the last little thing I wanted to talk about, of course, because as you know, one of my things is social media, and I think about it a lot as it relates, especially to this population.
mhm.
And the online dating piece, like, I haven't thought about that. I think a lot about, okay, what's your digital footprint? What are you putting on Facebook? What are you putting on Twitter? How it lasts
Right,
forever? I mean, I think a lot about that. But again, taking that next step, looking at the next stage in life, your
right.
online dating, and we were talking about her leaning in. I thought, oh my gosh, the profile pictures alone, like,
Well, absolutely. I mean, and she talks about how she struggled with the profile picture. And I think what's unique though, is that with all the struggles she has had in terms of trying to figure out what's best for her online dating profile, it's made her really aware of when other people are getting it wrong. Because
oh,
she'll like,
right,
did you
yeah.
see that profile? Oh, you should not do that profile picture, 'cause and I think, you know, she's aware of the jargon that people use online, and and we really, I don't know if we spent enough time talking about that in with adolescents. Your whole line, how do you present someone online? And frankly, it's there are a lot of people in the world that will strictly be meeting online and end up
Absolutely.
in serious relationships. So how do you present, and how do you control that? And she actually likes the opportunity to, to get a message, pause, reflect. She can do all her
Oh,
processing,
totally.
craft a message. I mean, I guess that's neurotypical. Everybody likes that. The chance to be thoughtful about what you're going to say versus sometimes in the moment, you're like, I like cats. And you don't want to necessarily blurt that out. So I think at the same time, ironically, there's a sadness within her that the community has moved away from talking on the phone, because she
Hmm.
feels she really could be more thoughtful about everything she shared, and what was out there.
Sure.
But now she goes, people just have to Google me and they know my whole life, and they just have access to so much. And she's like, I regret that, you know, that's the way the world is now. And so I think that's good. And she also told me, which, I didn't grow up dating in the internet age, that she's like, oh yeah, any guy I'm going to go, because
You got to
she,
Google them, man.
she goes, you have to Google them. And I'm like, really? And she just looks at me like I'm a crazy lady. But she said, yeah, it's a safety issue. And I thought, wow, I haven't worked in the classroom in several years, but if I went back working with adolescents in the classroom, I would definitely add that to my safety discussion.
Oh, yeah.
That,
You're speaking my language, because I
yeah.
think we are not talking enough about this. Like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's our own stuff gets tied up in it. I'm not, the number of times I've heard people say, well, I'm not going to talk about Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I'm like, you know what? This is not about you. This
Right.
is about what our kids have to navigate.
Right.
And when when you don't know, and you're not teaching them those things, like, you need to Google somebody, and also you will be Googled. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's the two-way street of, there's your employer, your future partners, I Google everybody. I meet somebody, I'm like, oh, what are they? I Google them. I look them up on Facebook. I cyber stalk everybody
Oh,
that I meet.
well, you're
'Cause
clearly not alone, because, she said that is, how, and, one of the things we're working on is, and I don't know if I'm sharing too much in terms of your time just going on, so feel free to cut me off. But one of the things she shared that I was like, yeah, I think you might be reading too much into that. Like, she's like, okay, so I met this guy in Meetup. I liked him. We exchanged like full names, and information, and it seemed pleasant. So I'm going to go on Facebook and like friend him. And if he friends me back, then I know he likes me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like, I don't know if that's accurate. I said, I'm not a Facebook connoisseur, but I think there are a whole bunch of people that just love having 5,000 friends. And so I don't know that it means he likes you. And she's like, well, I think it's a positive reaction. I said, yeah, but I don't know how much weight to give to that. She goes, well, then if they not only friend me, but then like comment to me, hey, like shout out, it's great to be Facebook friends, I
Right.
guess. She like puts that at a higher weight. So I really feel like listening to her and how she's had to really analyze, and she analyzes a lot, but how she manages all of this online perception of like, this means this and this means this level of interest.
It's huge.
Yeah, that I just looked at her and I said, you know what? I think I'm out of my depth there. I go, I can't speak to that as being true or not. I can give you my gut impression.
Right. Well, right.
But, I said the hard part is because nobody in school, even with neurotypical kids, talks about, what does it mean when you friend someone? What does it mean when you...
Right.
I mean, we'll tell them, if you send a naked photo, it doesn't even necessarily mean they like you, they're using you, we'll
Right.
get to that level. So I feel like we have these extreme discussions.
Totally.
But we don't have that minutia and that nuance that, oh God, I don't know if society as a whole has figured that out. So
no, I don't think, I don't think that they have. And, I think it's fascinating. But okay, well, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah.
Just, for the sake of people listening to us drone on and
Yeah.
on. It's great when you have your own podcast because you can just talk about whatever you want for as long as you want.
Well, you do a great job, Kelly. I always enjoy
Aw.
listening to your guests, and
Nice.
I learn a great deal. So
It's a fun thing.
I appreciate that I could share, my little window onto the world with this unique population. So
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing. And I, of course, will harangue you into doing it again on something else fascinating.
okay, well, take
Thanks,
care.
Sharon.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care, Kelly. Bye-bye.